This is Talk. As I say, welcome to the home of common sense. Welcome again also to Claire Pearsall, joining us all today. She is a former Conservative government advisor. Morning once again to you. Just had a really interesting conversation with Conor Tomlinson there about the Caribbean demand also for reparations. I want to come on to that, but let's talk again about the investment summit, because this is, this has been long trailed. We've had Labour's 100 days on Saturday, and basically it's been a grim 100 days. Started off that winter fuel allowance being axed for 10 million pensioners, and it kind of went downhill from there, didn't it? I was reading out earlier, 100 days on Saturday, YouGov did a poll. What is the best thing that Labour have done in office? And the top answer from 43% was nothing yet, which really tells you everything. The next top answer, only 4% could come up with something they thought was a good thing that Labour had done. Honesty about the economy. When they asked what the worst thing was, 34%, so a third of the country said winter fuel axing, and then it went down to 7%, a freebie scandal. So basically, people are really unimpressed with this government. Will they be impressed by this investment summit? That's the question, Claire.
I'm not sure that the country is going to be impressed by it, because it just seems to be another room full of people having a discussion. Most of the decisions, as you said previously, have already been made. The spending decisions around businesses pretty much have already been made.
That's how these things work. Even international summits, they basically have the officials come to the agreement beforehand.
This is it. This is the nice bit. This is like the present giving after they know exactly what's in it. But we also don't know the effects of the budget and this alleged increase in employers' NI contributions, because that hasn't been denied, which is always
studiously not denied.
And they've avoided it all weekend. They've avoided it on the media around this morning. So you think, that's a given.
Because the line was always, we're not going to put up taxes on working people, and that's the income tax, VAT, and national insurance. And then Jonathan Reynolds, the business secretary, over the weekend was saying, well, on working people, the tax, national insurance on employees. But of course, the national insurance is paid, but the employer takes it out on your PAYE and your wage slip. So, it's an extra cost, because people are looking at what is their take-home pay, aren't they? But then the employer, that's if you're a big business, that's 14.3%. It's 13.8%. But if you're a big employer, you pay the apprenticeship levy as well, and it's 14.3%. That's a massive tax. So you're saying, can we employ someone? What are the odds we can employ them with the new employment rights that are coming in? Sick pay from day one. You hire someone, they look great at the interview, and then day two, bit of a cough, got an allergic reaction like that bird off the radio. And then you're off sick, and there's nothing they can do about it. And you can't sack them because you have employment rights from day one. Plus, it's going to cost you an extra, 1%, 2%, 3%, but that is as a physical extra cost of hiring somebody.
It is, and if you were an employer, you would think, well, I'm not going to employ anybody who's young, anybody who's a woman, anody who's nearing pension age. So you're pretty much taking out all of the workforce. Why would you do that?
I'd hire 50-year-old men.
Would you? Is everybody
my tech operator
now?
Mark's grinning away. You're over 50 now, mate.
But I think you can't discourage people from employing individuals. I think if you've got vacancies, you need to fill them. This government is going to make that incredibly difficult and very, very expensive.
But this thing, is there an issue, and this has been pointed out by a lot of Conservatives, that no one in the Labour government in the front bench has ever set up or run a business. Now, a lot of the criticism of the Tories were all these self-made millionaires. I'm always very impressed with self-made millionaires, okay?
Yes, me too.
Here's my figures. If it was that easy, we'd all be one. People are so scathing about, the billionaires like Elon Musk and the, whatever. But there is a point where people who can actually run any business to a level of success that they have made that much money. I'm not saying money is the be-all or end-all. There are people who run amazing charities also. But I'm just saying people who can do that, achieve that level of success, are people worth listening to, because they might be good at running things and doing things and motivating people and solving problems and things like that. I don't know, people like Elon Musk maybe. But is it an issue that there's no one on the front bench Labour that has done anything major in the private sector?
I think it is. It's a real downfall of Labour not to have anybody that set up a business. It doesn't have to be a massive business, but I think to understand the hard graft that goes into it and the hard decisions that have to be made.
The point at which you go, shall I shall I hire someone else?
Exactly, and it's a real risk for those entrepreneurs that are doing it. And sometimes they have to take that leap. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But they pick themselves back up. And I think that unless you have that, you can't appreciate it.
Here's the other thing. A lot of this investment summit, you've got, you know, OK, Elon Musk not invited, and we are asking you, you know, are you really open for business if Elon Musk isn't invited? But you've got the likes of DP World, the ones who own P&O ferries, and again, quite rightly, in my view, described. I mean, I'm unlikely to agree with the Transport Secretary Louise Haigh on many things. I'm not going to lie. Particularly her hair colour. Look like a grown-up. You've got a grown-up job. Don't dye your hair bright pink. And don't look like you're a Just Stop Oil activist if you are representing this country. Have some. I really got an issue. I know I haven't got the greatest hair or clothes in the world, people. I'm not under any illusion. But just try and look like a grown-up when you're doing a grown-up job. But I mean, she called P&O a rogue operator and said they should be boycotted because they sacked 800 staff all on the same day. This was 2 years ago. Remember, it was big news at the time. Replaced them with foreign workers on agency deals, paid less than the minimum wage. I don't know what is a rogue operator if that isn't a rogue operator. She's quite right. Yeah. We should demand better from companies. I try not to buy stuff from Amazon wherever because I don't think they treat their staff well enough. I do my best. I order directly from a company, or I really do try. You should try. You vote with your money. But the thing is, these investment summits are always about big business. They're about the rich Middle Eastern companies, the big Chinese companies, big American companies. Actually, the vast majority of people in this country are employed, 80% of them, of people in the private sector, are employed by small to medium-sized businesses. Yeah. They're not going to be invited to these summits. They don't get a look into a lot of this stuff. But that's how most people make their money in this country, and that's how most people pay their taxes in this country. Do you think is it big, shiny companies? They get a lot of attention, but actually, your bog standard small businessman or woman who's just, quietly getting on with the job, creating Britain, creating jobs, creating wealth, paying their way, paying other people's way because they're paying more tax than other people. Yeah. They don't get a look in.
No, and they haven't. And I think successive governments have always sort of almost looked down on those small and medium-sized businesses as not really worth worrying about. But I would much rather have a country full of those than a country full of massive investment, because I think that you've got to have a mix and a split of these things. Electrical contractors, sandwich shops, nurseries for childcare, things like that. Those businesses
makes things happen.
Absolutely the backbone of this country. Yeah, and absolutely. We should celebrate it.
Yeah, but also, again, I think Labour particularly just obsessed with the public sector. 20% of people employed in this country are employed by the public sector. Everyone else is in the private sector, and most of those are in small and medium-sized businesses. I just think, one man, one woman bands. A lot of them.
It is. Isn't it?
Again, I just think they just completely ignore so much of it. It is a bit worrying. But here's the question on Elon Musk in particular. He's hosting this International Investment Summit in London today. How can Britain be open for business when Elon Musk, the world's richest man, wasn't invited? And if you haven't seen that footage, it is mind-blowing of that rocket and the rocket booster separating yesterday and the rocket booster coming back down. Something out of a sci-fi movie. I mean, genuinely, it is just, Space Odyssey, and it just comes and lands perfectly grabbed by the rocket sort of arms. Stunning. It is extraordinary. This is what this man is doing, OK? Yeah. We want this man to be involved in this country. He's a get-it-done person. That's what we like. I want to know your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. You can text on 87222. You can post a message on X at TalkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. I also want your thoughts on this next topic. Can't wait to hear more of your thoughts on this, because after we spoke to Conor Thompson, the Caribbean leaders led by the Barbadian Prime Minister calling on Britain to pay up tens of billions of pounds. I mean, 200 billion is the basic, they're saying. And as Conor was saying, it's in the trillions, otherwise they know that's not what they're going to get. But hey, worth a grift, because that's what it is. This is a grift. That's a technical term. I genuinely think this is criminal. This really is. But they want billions of pounds in compensation for the slave trade. Again, I mean, and David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, has talked about this. His parents were from Guyana, which is technically in South America, but he's in the Caribbean. He says, we are Caribbean. Personally, I thought he was British, which is what he is, because he's born here. But again, Guyana, the slave trade was ended in Guyana almost 200 years ago, but he's still talking. People are still going on about stuff. I mean, people in Britain were living terrible lives in Victorian mills and factories and peasant farming far more recently than that. So I want to know your reaction to that. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000 is the number to call on that. What do you make of this, Claire?
I mean, it just makes you wonder what views people have of United Kingdom, because why would we pay over all this money? We were the ones who abolished the slave trade, and there have been apologies made, whether you agree with that or not, and everybody agrees that this was wrong. But you sort of look at the, as you say, Victorian England, where people were in workhouses. They went to the poorhouse if they had no money and were worked to the bone. We sent kids up chimneys into factories in really dangerous circumstances. They weren't living the high life.
Yeah.
But here we are having to sort of, you know, wring our hands and say we're terribly sorry and hand over all the money. Well, that's my money and your money and your listeners' money that's going to be handed over.
Yeah, and they're talking about, you know, £1 million compensation for each person, but no one alive today was ever a slave. Their parents weren't slaves. Their grandparents weren't slaves. Now, I mean, I know America has a different history, but they've had the Jim Crow laws. They have had laws, you know, within living memory that deliberately prevented black people from, you know, buying their own home and things like that. Now, compensation for what has happened within living memory, I think, is a different issue because families haven't been able to grow wealth, and now there is a long-term impact of that. But yeah, I just find it absolutely. There is no person here who is of Caribbean descent who has come here as a slave. People were taken, sold by West Africans. Yeah. But black West African people, to white Europeans, taken over in the most horrendous conditions to be treated like animals. They were literally traded like animals in the most disgusting, appalling, repulsive way, which also is what has happened in every empire ever until the history time, until Britain got involved. And what was fascinating is it was very much like ordinary working class Britons who were lobbying for this, who cared about people, who actually cared about people they'd never met on the other side of the world and wanted those people to be free. I mean, I'm sorry, I think that says a lot about our country. I really do. I think our history is a proud history. And I find it extraordinary that they're not asking for reparations from those West African countries. They're quite happy to take billions from China. All those Caribbean countries are busy being colonised by China under the Belt and Road policy. China, as Colin Tomlinson was pointing out, quite happily have virtual concentration camps for millions of Uyghur people, Muslim Uyghurs. No one seems to care about them.
No, you sort of push them to one side. Do you think China's ever going to pay reparations to them?
I'd like reparations for COVID. I don't understand why we are not demanding reparations for COVID. This happened in the Wuhan lab. Everyone knows that.
Can you imagine if we said to them, right, this is what you owe us?
I mean,
there'd be some
trillions.
Excuse, wouldn't there?
And that was 4 years ago. That was 4 years
Definitely
ago.
living
not
memory.
200 years ago.
Living nightmare.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it was. And I think that there's organ harvesting that goes on in China as well. Some really hideous human rights problems and abuses. But no, we're the bad guys for something that we helped stop a couple of hundred years ago.
It is unbelievable.
Make it make sense.
Can I ask you, finally, we didn't get to this last hour, but Alex Salmond dying of a heart attack sadly in North Macedonia on Saturday. I didn't see the news until Sunday morning. Really, really sad. Talked to Mike a little bit just at the end of his show because we were both really friendly with Alex Salmond. I've known him for years from my days in the House of Commons. Always a absolute hoot. I've done, you know, the question times with him and things like that. I have to say, I mean, I would say even more fun off air than on air. But, I mean, he was a titan of not just Scottish politics, but British politics, wasn't he? Yeah,
he absolutely was. And he was one of those characters. I didn't know him, but you knew he was around in the House of Commons. You couldn't help but feel that presence there. And I think he did an enormous amount for Scottish politics. Whether you agree with him or not, it actually made people sit up and pay attention to what was going on north of the border.
Well, I mean, if you think how unimportant the SNP were when he took them, they were like the Green Party here in the UK
like
now.
A fringe
instead of then taking them into government as first person. But I mean, and then what's happened to him since then? After, you know, these charges that were they were cooked up by Nicola Sturgeon's government against him. These sex assault. I was amazed when I put out a tweet yesterday. A number of people who said, "Oh yeah, and what about, you know, the women he harassed?" So found not guilty on all charges.
People don't like that because they don't like the character of a person. They think that everything is wrong about
He liked to drink. He liked to joke.
Yeah.
And I think he liked women quite a lot. But I'm sorry, I mean, again, he's one of these... In the comments, that whole Me Too thing, there were men you heard rumours about, and there were men who, for harassment. There's a difference between people who harass and people who, should we say, enjoy the company of women. Let's just put it like that. And I think he was one of those. And women enjoyed his company.
Well, exactly. And in the House of Commons, you're normally quite a robust group of people, and you know which ones to avoid.
Yeah.
And
I thought he was just a great character.
He was never on one of those lists.
No, absolutely. And as I said to Mike, even more fun off air than on. Absolutely. The things he would gossip about. But anyway, I know. I think it's a really great loss. I really do. And very, very, very sad to have lost him at 69.